Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Joe and I'm the dad.
And I'm Raya and I'm the daughter.
We have a second follow-up to our last week's show on AI. And we talked about all of the amazing things that AI could do. In the future, AI will create its own farm.
Its own farm?
Yeah. And I can then say, my computer had a farm, A-I-A-I-O.
Oh, goodness. We mentioned on the last podcast that we will sometimes put our ideas into ChatGPT and have it generate an outline for us to discuss. This time, we thought we would ask ChatGPT, how might AI change the LGBTQ community? And let it give us its list that we could then discuss. And it gave us a list of 7 things. This is a really good jumping off point for us to discuss because there are some things that I would not have thought of. So,
me too.
Let's jump in.
Okay. It says in the beginning, well, it could change advocacy and activism. So it could enhance by helping people organize, maybe amplify their voices through data-driven campaigns. So organizations like PFLAG, etc., could analyze social trends and they could identify oppressive patterns, which would be very helpful, and things that would be just becoming developed at this point. It could help targeting advocacy efforts more effectively. So if there's a group over here that is creating some false information, it could find that, it could target that, and it could help counter those kind of situations, which means that machine learning models could detect discriminatory practices in institutions or governments. So that would be really cool, don't you think?
Yeah, the way that I think of ChatGPT or any AI is that it can do a lot of repetitive work for you that you'd have to pay a human a lot of money to do. It can go and watch every single episode of a TV show. It could go through and look at every transcript that has ever been given for a political speech. It can go through, you can give it the task. You figure out what data you want to analyze and say, this is the criteria. And then it can go through and do all of that would take a human a lot of work to do.
There might be an organization that's starting up somewhere in Idaho, and they're going to appear as though they might expand and create some unfortunate things for the LGBTQ communities. Things that could really be harmful to the LGBTQ community. AI could find those things, encounter what happens so that we would be able to use all of that counter information to squelch false theories and false ideas before they develop.
Right. It can analyze the data, it can analyze the patterns, and we can go in and see where there are systemic issues, and it will help to suggest some solutions for those. Which brings us to number 2, which is one systemic issue in particular, and that is healthcare and mental health support. This is an important one for me with my job working in insurance. It's very closely tied to healthcare. AI-driven technologies could improve healthcare outcomes for LGBTQ plus individuals by offering more personalized and inclusive care. For instance, gender-affirming healthcare. This has been a big one for me personally. AI could support more accurate diagnoses and care for trans individuals, facilitating access to gender-affirming treatments through personalized medicine.
Wow, that's cool.
That's very cool because when we have to work with outdated systems, it can be a real hassle. I want to just break in for a second here. I had a conversation on my work chat here about a week or two ago about gender-affirming healthcare This isn't related so much to AI, but it's really important. It's a great way that somebody can be an ally. I didn't realize that I needed an ally here. Somebody was asking in the transgender group, how does our company do for trans healthcare? And I said, generally, it does really well. I've had a very positive experience with my company and the way that it has helped me. However, there are some things like they just changed over to a new system for our rewards program. And I can earn rewards like gift cards for doing my health and wellness activities when I exercise or get my annual physical. But it asks me to do things like, for instance, it says, I notice you have not had a PAP this year. You might want to think about getting that, and I'll give you points for that. And I have no way to go in there and tell it, I will never need a PAP test. Sorry, that because I don't have and will never have a cervix.
Correct.
So that will just not work. However, I will need mammograms and I will need prostate screenings. Those are unique to me as a trans individual. AI can understand those things. And in this situation, that person actually said in our chat, I'm going to reach out to our management for you. And they actually went and they did what allies are supposed to do. I actually didn't realize that I needed an ally. The reason that I didn't reach out is because I thought that's a lot of hassle for me. And all that's going to come from it is bad feelings. And maybe I'll push through to where I get a resolution. I would rather just, when I look at it, say, I don't care, it gets it wrong.
That's where AI can come in and really create personalized medicines, personalized care for each person, which is very cool.
Yes, yes. AI will eventually get us to move from that one single form of one size fits all to recognize maybe we need to change things up a little bit. Now, that always takes work. It'll get there. It'll get there.
How about in the mental health area?
So AI chatbots or virtual therapists tailored to LGBTQ plus people could provide mental health support, especially in regions where access to affirming human therapists may be limited. Now, I would never recommend AI as a replacement for therapists, but I think that it can help you, just as we talked about for everything else, being a tool to come alongside of. Now, I've had, when we've talked on this podcast about my own interactions with my therapist, but I have sometimes had issues that I was continuing to turn over in my mind. And I've had a few times where I've gone on to ChatGPT and I've said, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking. And I've used it almost like a journaling exercise.
Oh.
And then just said, hey, any thoughts for me? And then it's come back and it will say, X, Y, Z. And it will give me a lot of points. And some of them are not that helpful for me. But a few of them I thought, that was really good. And then it got me to go. It was almost like an interactive journaling prompt. And then I journaled the next part of it. It came back and said, here are my analyses on this. I went back again and then journaled my next part. So that can work very well as well. I would never say to replace that human interaction because humans are always going to have that connection with one another that a machine will never have.
So AI is bringing us some real positive things here for the LGBTQ community. We're already talking about, which is nice, about advocating certain things, really helping to get the word out that the LGBTQ community is normal. AI can help us dramatically with that. When it comes to healthcare, AI can help us dramatically with that. It is going to improve our lives so much, which is wonderful. That's really exciting. Is there anything else that AI can do that we can see is going to help us?
There sure is. Let's go on to point number 3. Would you read that one? This is taking really our health from outside of the health institutions into our regular life.
Regarding online safety and community building, AI tools can enhance the safety of online platforms by using the LGBT community by identifying and removing harmful content like hate speech or maybe harassment. How about discriminatory behavior? However, this isn't all good because there's also a concern about AI-powered censorship misidentifying queer content as inappropriate. And that can be a problem with some algorithms.
Right, not Al Gore.
Yeah.
This has been something, a topic of conversation among the queer community or the LGBT plus community for about the last decade or so. Again, I do a lot on YouTube, so you hear me talk about that a lot. And YouTube creators have talked about that when they talk about just very inane kinds of queer content, it will sometimes get flagged as adult. And they say, wait a minute, I wasn't talking about anything related to sexuality or related to any kind of adult topics. I was just talking about that I'm a girl and I have a girlfriend.
I see.
Or anything related to somebody having two dads or somebody transitioning. But it has come to understand that LGBTQ issues are somehow connected with sexuality, and sexuality tends to be an adult topic, and therefore all of that must be related somehow.
You think it's likely that they'll be able to come up with some way to avoid that?
I think so. We have seen, actually, that the initial uses of AI got a lot of things wrong. For instance, they discovered that when they trained it on some of the very first data sets, that it was giving, or it was tending towards very quickly becoming racist or becoming misogynistic or taking on some other prejudices because it was just reflecting back the internet culture, and internet culture is filled with a lot of toxic behaviors.
Well, if they ever go after left-handers, I'm going to have a talk to those people.
But once they realized that, they were able to go in and make some adjustments to the algorithms and say, this is not okay. We are not there yet. And so while AI can be really helpful for us in flagging some things, we don't ever want it to flag the wrong things. And also, I think it's very important to talk about that freedom of speech matters a lot.
Of course.
Now, freedom of speech is not the same as freedom of being heard. What I mean by that is, I don't think that if you want to go on to Twitter, or they call it X now, and say something stupid, that you should be stopped from doing it. But I do think that if you're going on there and making up misinformation about, oh yeah, it's the aliens are in it with the gay aliens are all coming and they're do you know what they're doing to the soil?
I don't want to know.
And you're spreading misinformation, that algorithm does not need to be promoting it. What has happened is that the algorithms have figured out, hey, this misinformation sure seems to get a lot of eyeballs because it makes people angry and it brings more people. Let's amplify this and show this to a bunch of people. Well, that's not helpful. When AI gets it right, and when the algorithm accurately determines that this is misinformation, and it doesn't amplify it, it doesn't squelch it, but it doesn't amplify it either, that's when it's doing its job.
I'm Monica Scarbin. I love listening to the Transcendent podcasts, probably because I've been a guest speaker. I've been listening to these podcasts for over 2 years now and have found them to be not only inspirational, but very informative and emotionally lifting to my spirits, especially when I'm not feeling very hot. I'm a supporter, and I'm glad to be a supporter. Please go to Transcendent.com, click on support. By as little as $3 a month, you can cancel at any time.
Number 4, representation in media and AI bias.
So how will AI do its job in the media.
AI-generated content, such as films or music, could offer more diverse or inclusive representations of LGBTQ plus experiences, especially as media production increasingly relies on machine learning. However, if AI systems are trained on biased data, as we just talked about, they might unintentionally perpetuate harmful stereotypes. Continuous efforts will be needed to ensure inclusivity in AI-driven media production. Now, I'm going to push back on this. I think that we asked AI, hey, what are some ways that you could help? And it said, I can make you movies and TV shows. I could do a lot of great work. Well, yes, maybe. But I don't ever want to start watching TV shows that are created exclusively by AIs.
Well, you say that now, but there might be a time when you would say, whoa, that was great.
Well, this, I think, comes back to what we talked about in the last episode about there being some concerns about having creative enterprises taken away from human hands
Yes.
and put into this machine learning kinds of things, where when we ask it to give us an unpredictable result, it gives us unpredictability in very predictable kinds of ways. So it ends up being not all that predictable. The best AI is always going to be, or the best use of it, is a collaboration. So you take the human effort that was already there and join it together with some new things that human creative individual might not have thought about. And a creative person can use the content coming from AI to create something that is even more creative than they would have come up with on their own.
Well, you're looking at art, for example. If AI creates music, it might be beautiful music. But is it taking away from people who create music? Is the same with beautiful art that it's created that AI could do as well or better than someone else? And should they be allowed to continue that, or should they not be allowed to do that? On the other hand, AI might create a new alloy that would be terrific, something that would be much better than we had before. It'll be very light and very strong, or whatever the parameters is that we're looking for, and this will be discovered, but it hasn't had any human input. Is that okay? Are you saying then that, wait a minute, we can't do all of this because it's taken away from us?
Well, I don't ever want to stand in the way of progress.
Hooray!
Just like the horse and buggy manufacturers maybe didn't like when cars and automobiles were first coming onto the scene, but eventually we're going to go to the thing that makes the most sense for us, and horse and buggies are going to go away. We are on a trajectory towards this, and that's how things are going to be.
Well, that's just because they didn't pony up any ideas for that.
Oh, my goodness. But we do see when there's a collaboration, at least as things have been so far, a trained artist, when they're working on their own, can generally produce things that are better quality slightly than what AI will produce. But an AI and a trained artist together can produce things that are much better quality much quicker than somebody can produce just on their own.
It really is kind of an interesting subject that could create podcasts of its own, couldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And it's a part of a much wider conversation that we don't have time. We scratched the surface of it a little bit last time, but right now we're just talking about what are some ways that we can help with our community, which brings us to the next one. Number 5, this is one that resonates very much with me. Gender and identity exploration.
Right.
So AI could assist people in exploring their gender identity by offering tools that allow individuals to see what they look like with different gender presentations through augmented reality and deep learning models or AI-powered virtual avatars. These tools can help people safely explore their identities without external judgment or risk.
That's pretty interesting.
That already exists. There are some filters on Snapchat or other social media sites where you can snap a selfie of yourself and then have it tell you what you would look like as the opposite gender. I don't know how it works with non-binary, but generally it's just taking a guy and saying, here's what you'd look like as a girl, or taking a girl and here's what you'd look like as a guy.
So that already exists.
Yes, it does. And then there can be voice modulation where it would change your voice so that you put in what sounds like you and it spits out what sounds like somebody else. Again, we're getting into the area of things that are, you could have some real ethical violations with it. But as long as you're being ethical with it, you're not trying to impersonate somebody or lie to somebody, pretend that you're somebody that you're not. I've told the story here before that the way that I first discovered my gender identity was creating an online persona, because I knew online nobody would see me as a guy wearing a dress.
Correct.
And that helped me to realize, I think this is really who I am. That was my very first step. If I would have had the tools available then that are available now, it could have been amazing. On the other hand, I have friends that I know have been dissatisfied with the way that their transitions have gone, that have gone on to some of these tools. And actually, even non-transgender folks, one of the dangers is that you just have cisgender people that go and they put themselves into this filter, and it makes you all of a sudden glamorous beyond anything that you would ever do on your own. And you think, that's not what I really look like.
Right.
And it can make you feel more dissatisfied with who you are. And yet there's also something that feels really fun about it. It's kind of a mixed bag there. But it certainly is a wonderful way to give you some tools to explore in ways that I didn't have even when I transitioned just 10 years ago.
That's how far AI has come. And it's just beginning. This is like the early stages of the internet. So there's a lot more that's coming up.
It's not all good.
No,
though,
it certainly
and
isn't.
ChatGPT gave us the next point to have some concerns.
Surveillance and privacy concerns could be a big deal for the LGBTQ community. On the downside, AI could disproportionately affect the LGBTQ community, especially in areas where being out is risky or even illegal in some countries or some areas. Governments or organizations could use facial recognition and other tracking technologies to out or monitor LGBTQ individuals, potentially putting them at risk of discrimination or violence. And this is a real scary thing.
It sure is. Now, I haven't seen it get to this level, but what I can say is I have seen folks that were on TikTok that would say, I somehow found my way over to lesbian TikTok. TikTok knew that I was a lesbian or bisexual before I did.
Really?
Yes. And through TikTok or through these social media things, that algorithm identifies similarities. We talked in the last program about how when it's analyzing photos, it looks for things that we don't even have words for. It just has zeros and ones that it puts to it. It puts zeros and ones to the ways that we interact with content, and it can find similarities. I remember hearing a story, this was not LGBTQ related, but similar, that somebody was getting coupons sent to them for baby diapers and formula and a lot of things for somebody that would be having a baby soon. And it was the mother of her daughter that said, why is my daughter getting all of these things?
Oh, yeah.
And it turns out that the algorithm had identified that she was doing some behaviors that pregnant people do. And if she was doing these behaviors,
it outed
her. High likelihood, and it outed her before she even knew.
That's really not funny.
It's not funny, but
yeah.
it's
Wow.
It's where we're going with things, and so there can be real dangers.
Well, we could use that to our advantage. You could have people coming to our podcast.
We would love to see that happening.
Absolutely. In fact, we would like to encourage you to share this with others. That helps us.
Let's talk about number 7. Let's end on a happy note. AI or ChatGPT thinks that AI has the potential to help us out with dating and relationships. This is a good, feel-good one. AI can also enhance dating apps, improving matchmaking algorithms to create more meaningful conversations while potentially challenging biases around sexual orientation, gender, and identity. However, the ethical implications of how algorithms categorize or filter LGBTQ plus individuals could raise concerns around inclusivity and autonomy. I understand that they're already using some of these things, that on dating apps, when you go in, it will already give you some prompts of, you might want to start this conversation this way.
Yeah. Like, for example, I love fishing. and they'll pair you up with somebody that loves fishing.
And it finds things that you put on your profile, and it says, hey, the person you're talking to said this on their profile. Maybe you want to ask them about this thing.
Yeah,
you want to say this one.
I was being foolish, but things like, for example, you are somebody who really enjoys Broadway shows, for example, that it would be fun to be paired up with somebody who enjoys seeing those things as well. On the other hand, you may be somebody who is a fan of the New York Jets. And here's a New York Jets fan. On the other hand, wait a minute, they might be a Chicago Bears fan, and they don't want to have anything to do with that.
As it goes on, it will learn more and more about you and learn things that maybe we had not even thought about, that, we think of as love for sports, but it actually identifies a behavior that it thinks of as 12763212984
Yes.
or whatever, and that's how it sees it.
Hey, I know that person.
Right? It sees the pattern and connection that it's just with numbers and its algorithms and says, I think that this is going to be a good pair. That would be wonderful. With all of these things, there are ethical concerns. And we talked about the ethical concerns last time, and it's come up again this time. But when we use it ethically and we find ways, a lot of these questions are not easy to answer. But if we can find good answers, the tools are there to really help us in a lot of great ways. And our LGBTQ plus community can really benefit from this. AI editor ChatGPT said, in short, AI could empower the LGBTQ plus community by improving access to resources, safety, representation. But it will also require careful attention to ethical and privacy issues to ensure that it benefits rather than harms individuals in the community. And that's what we need to watch for.
And that is true of all communities. All communities can benefit from AI, and all communities have to ensure that it's not going to harm those communities. Whether you happen to be a baker or a candlestick maker or possibly a frogman. Either way, AI can help you or it can hurt you. And will there be people misusing it? Of course. As soon as something comes along that's new and different, they'll find ways to abuse it.
But one thing that will never abuse you is this podcast.
Of course.
We are here for you every Monday morning, coming out with some positive ideas for you, ways that you can be a better ally or ways that you can improve your relationships. Thank you so much for taking the time to come here and join us. We're grateful to have you.
And with that, we'll see you again next week. Monday.
You got to say it right.